So, because it's our newly celebrated Alberta Day this weekend, there's lots of festivities happening in the city. Would have loved to actually go in and watch Brett Kissel sing, but I am out here in the country and loving it, and had just had some conversations with my dad actually about our history here in Alberta and our family's history. And as I've mentioned before, like most farms around here, we're multi-generational. Again, excellent stewards of the land. We want to see this land continue to produce for multiple generations into the future. And I guess when I was talking to my dad, I just thought, this is kind of a cool story to share. All the farmers here have cool stories, and it's worth listening to them and hearing them and realizing what's been a part of helping build this great province that we love. So part of our story is my great-grandpa. When he was 17, he was in Scotland and he emigrated to Vermont in the US. He found work as a stone cutter. He was a stone cutter, I think, before he left Scotland as well. And eventually in Vermont there, he realized that there wasn't as much opportunity. But he had heard of this amazing city that was starting to be developed across the entire continent called Vancouver. Set out for Vancouver. He was married at that time. And so he went out himself, decided to check it out before he packed up his wife and kids to bring them across that entire country too. That would have been quite the ordeal. Once he got out there, he actually kind of took a turn for the worse and had some health problems. I'm imagining, I don't know the exact history of it, but I'm imagining it was something with his lungs, with all the dust from being a stone cutter. And in the meantime, he had already sent word to his wife that, this is a promising place. And his wife had packed up the kids and they were heading out to Vancouver as well. So on their journey, they stopped at Dinton, Alberta, which is the cutest little church that was right close to our place. So my great-grandma and my grandpa, they stopped in Dinton to see her side of the family. And while they were there, I guess that's when they got word that my great-grandpa had fallen sick and wasn't going to be able to continue his career as a stone cutter. So he ended up coming back out to Dinton, Alberta, and meeting up with his family. And there just happened to be a bachelor at that time that had just recently plowed up 50 acres of farmland, which would have been quite a huge job at that time, even though right now 50 acres doesn't sound like an immense amount. But the conditions back then and the implements they had to do that with would have been extremely tedious. So in the end, my great-grandparents ended up buying that 50 acres in 1909, and that was the beginning of McWilliam Farms. It wasn't too much later that my grandpa actually took over the farm and started expanding little bits by bits as they could. And then my dad took over the farm from him at also a very young age and has done an incredible job of expanding and keeping up with technology and implementing best practices. And now I'm here as 4th generation and my kids are here as 5th generation. So we're just very, very proud and very grateful of the opportunity that Alberta has given us. And the reason why I'm taking you on this walk is I'm out here looking for the original water source when they first came out here in 1909. My dad said it's somewhere out here in this hayfield. So I am just searching for it. And then I'll tell you a story about that too. So I found it. It doesn't really look like much right now, but when you're coming out here in 1909 to homestead and start to build a farm life for your family, I expect that you get darn resourceful. So seeing that there's a bunch of cattails around here, that's always a good indication that it is a wet area, and at some times in the year there's likely standing water. But as you can see right now, there's no standing water. But the soil is like really nice and damp. It's nice soil in here. So I imagine over the years, there's been a bunch of dirt blow in here and fill it in because it hasn't been used for water collection. But back when they first found this area, you could have done a bit of digging and you would have had a hand dug well that you could have sourced some water from. Because out here, you definitely need the water to survive. I can't imagine coming to this for the first time and figuring how to build a life from that. Pretty incredible great grandma and great grandpa. Just cannot imagine as I'm walking through this heat how tough this would have been to settle in Alberta. But thank goodness they did. Thank you to all of those who did, to your family members. I hope that we really start to seek out the stories before they're gone, to listen to some of them. I know I have huge regrets with my grandparents. I didn't meet my dad's dad ever. He passed away before I was born. But my dad's mom lived to be just over 100. It's pretty cool. She took her first helicopter ride in the basket of a helicopter as she was airlifted out of High River during the floods at the age of 94. And that's one of her recent stories, but you know, that period of time that generation lived to, there will never be a time in history where the world changed so much. I was just talking to my neighbor Brad about it out here in the field. He said, can you imagine going from settling in 1909, plowing up the dirt with a horse-drawn plow, to by the end of my grandma's days, she was on Facebook. What the heck? Like the things that she lived through and the change she had to adapt to. The people before me were a resilient group of people. And I think it's just important, especially when we're thinking of Alberta days and the pride that we have in our province. We need to celebrate those stories. The irony is not lost on me of this last little walk as I jump into my air-conditioned vehicle and drink my Fiji water.